Hey everyone! It's been a little while since I've done a video, and I hope everyone's doing well. I just wanted to touch on something that has come up a little bit, and I think is really interesting to go into a little further. I did a video a little while ago about who we are. Like, we're not our bodies, we're not our personalities, we're not our minds, etc. And I think sometimes it can be really hard to wrap our head around the idea that we're not our personalities, because we feel like, well, that's who we've always been. And I have my own experience from that, which has been really interesting lately, so I'll tell you that. And then a couple of examples that I think also make this point. So in my experience, as you all know, before I was diagnosed with brain cancer, I ended up in the ER. That's how they first knew there was a problem. I was having a pretty bad seizure. And I have always been a very scientific left brain person. And so, if you wanted to convince me of anything, whether that's, discussions about God and religion, or, whether or not you should use fertilizer on your lawn or anything like that, any discussion, like, I wanted the details and the science behind it, or some sort of facts that were convincing. Other people could say, oh, no, I just don't have a good gut feeling about that. Or, no, my heart's not into that. That kind of thing was never something that really happened to me, very rarely, if ever. I really like to look at the research and the data, which is why I loved being in science so much. But after I had that really bad seizure, within 24 hours, it was like I had extreme ADD. And with that ADD, I could not sit down and read a paragraph without getting totally off. And if I did read the paragraph, if I read it out loud and you said, okay, tell me what that paragraph just said, I couldn't tell you. It was really, really bad right then. It's gotten a little better, but it's still pretty bad now. And so interestingly, now I have found myself acting very differently. Try to think of a real example, and I can't think of one, but a fake example would be something like this. If Mark had found a doctor for me to go see about some specific thing, and I'd say something like, nope, I've got a bad gut feeling about that doctor, I'm not going to that doctor. And Mark would say, bad gut feeling? I've never heard anything bad about this. Nope, I've got a bad gut feeling, I'm not going. You've got to find somebody else. So I'm acting very differently. It's really interesting. And Mark's been having some good laughs over it, for sure, as I have too. But, if you knew me before and you knew me later, you'd be like, wow, this isn't really the same type of person. So that to me is a really interesting example that I've lived through, to say, I'm not my personality, I'm not my personality. And there's a couple of other examples that I think are really interesting. One is, this is a pretty difficult topic to bring up, and I'm sure if anyone's ever experienced this, or anyone in their family has, it's going to be difficult to hear this, but I think it is interesting. I was going for a walk with my neighbor, Garrett, who I really adore, and I find him fascinating because he also has a degree as a counselor, and he's also been trained as a minister or chaplain. I'm not really sure which one, but he's got an interesting background. And he was telling me that there was an NPR episode, which of course the old me would have looked this one up before I told you about it, but the new me's like, oh, I'm just going to tell him about it. So I can't promise you that I've got my details accurate or not, but basically some guy who had always been just kind of a normal average person in our country, I think he'd had a brain tumor or something going wrong with his brain, and I think it was a tumor, and as it grew, at some point he became a pedophiliac. And they went and they did surgery on him, like they do on many brain cancer patients. And when they got part of this tumor out, and it was much smaller, the pedophilia went away, completely went away. And then over time, as the tumor started growing again, it came back again. This guy had never, ever had a history of being a pedophiliac. And I find that so fascinating. Especially because what it tells me is, not only are we not our personalities, but it also tells me, like, wow, it's, our society, it's changing for sure. So it used to be okay, 100 years ago to think badly about Black people, for example. And nowadays, most people are like, oh, hell no, but you can feel badly about a pedophiliac. They're terrible people. And I look at that now and I think, wow, but is that really true? I mean, of course, the action's terrible. I would never want that on any child. I'm sure none of you would either. But the fact that somebody did that, is that because they're a bad person? What if it's as simple as that's how their brain is wired? Just like I might be really interested in blonde people and you might be interested in brunettes, or I might really like Chinese looking features and you might like Mexican looking features or Spanish looking features, or you know what I mean? Like, we all are just attracted to things. Some people are attracted to men, others are attracted to women. So it's not, I remember seeing this video once, which was great, where they were talking, I think it was some Christian group that was going against gay people. And they were interviewing these Christian people saying, oh, you're against homosexuality. And they said, oh yeah, totally against it. The Bible's against it. God's against it, etc. And they said, well, can you tell me when you made the decision to be a heterosexual? And the person went like, well, I didn't make a decision. I just was. Like, okay. So, hearing the story about this guy who was a pedophiliac and then he wasn't, and then he was again, just made me have a lot of compassion. And not just for pedophiliacs, but for all kinds of people that our society is tearing down for their actions and things. It's a difficult situation. The other example that I think is interesting, and a lot of people have experienced this with their elder family members, is that when people get Alzheimer's, they often change very, very much. And so you could have somebody who's always been sweet and kind and, oh, come to my house, I've got tea for you, what kind would you like? And then they get Alzheimer's and they're cussing at people and yelling and throwing things, or vice versa. People who come from a really kind of angry place, and then they get Alzheimer's and all of a sudden they're quite happy and kind. And, it's really interesting. And so that whole idea of who are you? If you start really digging into that, which I did at night, like I'd get to bed and I'd lie down on the pillow and I'd really start thinking, am I this body? Okay, well, what if they did have to cut off my legs? What if they did have to take my heart out and put someone else's, or my kidneys out and put someone else's in? Am I still me? And eventually I talked myself out of, I'm my body. But am I my personality? That's a difficult one. But I hope that, some of the things that I just listed can help you think about it a little further, because that was a tough one for me to really get my hands around. But I feel myself, and who knows if I'm right or not, but that I'm not my personality, not at all. And so then the question comes back to, well, then who are you? And I think there's a very spiritual answer to that, but it's belief. And beliefs are not facts by definition. They're just your own beliefs. So just another idea to encourage you to start thinking some of these things through, so that you can come up with your own beliefs. And we may never know if we're right or not, but when you have your own belief that, wasn't handed to you as a child or wasn't taught to you by our society or something, it's a belief that you've really thought through and have come to your own place at. I think it really helps you when you do come to a situation like I'm in, where, you're standing on death's door. Makes me feel pretty comfortable with the situation. Not that I want it, but I feel pretty comfortable with it. So anyway, I hope you guys are all well. Love you.